Welcome to Buckets, coming to you from the Tommy John home studios. This is the Future Jays. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hope you had a profitable weekend betting both NBA, great slate on Saturday, and then the NFL games on Sunday. Hope you guys really reached for it and got that extra yard to get home on all of your bets, as those are wont to do. Whether, and hope that it was so obvious it held up even after replay that you're able to get across on those bets. On today's show, we will talk about some futures. We're going to talk about an MVP discussion through the prism of the Western Conference playoff race. We're going to talk about Rookie of the Year again, because we have a new challenger has emerged, and we're going to talk about his chances for taking home that award, as we are in an inescapable, we can't get out of Rookie of the Year on this show. No matter how Jim Turvey wants it to end, we have to talk more Rookie of the Year. And then we'll do best bets for the Monday slate. Hope you guys are doing well and enjoying and staying warm out there. Let's go. So let's start here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continues to take money in the market. And this is an example to me. I'm joined by Jim Turvey, Joe Dellera. Jim Turvey is from Roto Grinders. You can find him on Twitter in the Action Network app at TurveyBets. Joe Dellera is on Twitter in the Action Network app at Joe Dellera. You can catch that podcast with Joe. And stay tuned, because a certain podcast from Action Network about a certain women's professional basketball league will be returning very shortly.
Big trade today, Matt. You see that?
I did see that. I feel bad for the Aces. You give up on Kelsey. Kelsey is like God to me. So I can't believe they gave up.
I'm very curious to see how that turns out. I didn't get to dig in fully yet, but there's some intriguing stuff there for sure.
Yeah.
In the MVP market, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander minus 350 at Bet365, minus 325 at BetMGM. You can find the shortest at DraftKings at minus 320. Nikola Jokic plus 260 at Bet365. That's the best number in the market, as low as plus 200, as Bet Rivers is just basically telling you that it's going to take a nightmare hold on you and you can just deal with it, because they have Shai minus 400 and Nikola only plus 200. Notably, Giannis Antetokounmpo is, if these I'll double check this, I believe 100-1 at BetMGM, which that seems aggressive. Jason Tatum bringing up the rear at 200-1. The reason I wanted to talk about this is from the perspective of Denver won't really go away. Denver keeps winning. They did take a pretty brutal loss to the Timberwolves. They're on a road trip. They haven't been great on the road this season, but Denver has pulled 28-17. Now they're still 9 back of the Thunder, which that's ridiculous, but true. They are 9 back in the loss column from the Thunder. They're not. I will just tell you, they're not catching OKC. They're not going to overtake. Do not bet them for division. That's not going to happen. But what I do think is interesting here, Jim, if we're going to talk about futures from this perspective, is there's kind of like a correlated conversation to have here with MVP, where you can look at from beyond the MVP market and you can look at win totals, because that's what this is going to become. We're going to have a conversation about Giannis, and we can do that. I am not particularly sold on it, and I'll say why. But the current numbers that are up and available in the market, you do have the Nuggets are at 51.5. Okay. So if you think that the Nuggets are going to go over 51.5, the question is going to become, and this is how I've phrased this in every MVP conversation I've had for the past 2 weeks. If you want to know how to bet MVP or how to look at it in terms of deciding who you think is going to win or should win or whatever, this is the question you have to ask. If Shai gets to 65 plus, how many does Joker have to get to if he continues to do this, where he's at 30 points? He's averaging a 30-point triple-double while being 10th in effective field goal percentage and leading the league, well, he was until Saturday, leading the league in three-point percentage.
And 4th in steals?
And 4th in steals.
DPOY.
Stupid numbers. Hey, according to BPM, which I just found out, actually factors assists into how it calculates defense. That's why Joker and Sabonis' defensive BPM has been so high. A certain person we know was not thrilled about that conversation. So my question here is just like, if you're going to bet the over on the Nuggets at 51.5, you should probably just go ahead and bet Joker, because I think that probably gets him into the range of the conversation. But I'm just curious as to both of your thoughts here. If we ask the question, how many does Joker need to win if he keeps up his statistical pace, which is tough, to catch Shea at 36-6 on a 65+ win team?
Honestly, do you think it's a win thing or a seed thing? Because when you originally messaged this, I read seed, and I almost think that seed is more important because you're right. The Nuggets aren't going to be catching the Thunder 100%. But there is definitely a path for them to get to the 2 seed. Now, if the gap is 65-50, it might not matter. In fact, I kind of think if the Thunder get to 65, it might not matter at all. Like Denver could get to 55, and I'm not sure it would really matter, especially if Shea is playing at the level he has been playing. But if we talk about like 60 and 53, and that's the 1 seed and the 2 seed, I think it starts to be a really interesting conversation. You posted Jokic this weekend. I instantly hopped on that. I said, I don't have many plays in this market. I've got Shea at plus 550. I wanted the Jokic at, around, I think plus 400 was where you grabbed it. I do think that there is leverage to this. Now, the Jokic number has come down a lot since that. That was the night that he went absolutely bananas. I think that was the night of the almost 20-20-20 game, or it was the night that he went for it. Every night is a different crazy stat line, which is kind of the point, that he's doing just absolutely insane things right now. I still maintain that I think the voters are going to want to give it to Shea if it's close. I think they want an excuse to give it to him. I do think, again, I know this has been my party line for the whole time. I do think the 4 and 5 years of it all will be a thing to the degree as a tiebreaker. If the Thunder win 65 games and they have like Shea, it's right there to give to Shea. His numbers are outstanding. I mean, we saw him put up 54 points in a kind of scary win that they had. I do think, again, I think the Thunder have shown a few cracks. I think there is a route to them going, we don't need to win 65 games if no one in the West else is going to win over 55. We can land on 60. They're not going to think about that, and they're not going to think about how it impacts MVP, but it very well could, especially like I picked 60 because it's an arbitrary number, factor of 10. If it's 59 and they're both sitting in the 50s and Jokic's stat line is notably better, he's going to always have the edge in BPM. He's ahead in EPM as well. Suddenly, I do think that there is a pretty strong conversation to be had. I wouldn't really want to buy in at like the plus 200 right now. The longest I think you said was like plus 270. That's a little bit more interesting to me. But I think we will have waves of this throughout the season. I don't think we're done seeing peaks and valleys of this market. And we can even talk about the Giannis of it all. But I think when looking at these two guys, it's an interesting time to at least get like a little nibble of Jokic if you just did a Shea position to start the season. And I think it very much could be, I think it is also dependent on looking at Memphis and Houston, because those are 2 teams that are going to be in those low 50s. I think both of those teams could easily slip, and Denver has looked strong. I think there is a path to the 1 seed OKC at 59, the 2 seed Denver at 53, and Jokic having the statistical profile to make it that he grabs his 4th and 5th in 5 years.
In order for the Thunder to win 60 games, they have to finish 24-14. So they have to have 14 losses from now to the end of the season. They have 8 so far.
It is hard when you frame it that way, but I do think they have looked a little bit more vulnerable of late, and they've been they've any health stuff, working.
Well, we can't. I'm going to defend them here because they're going to be like, you can't seriously be throwing out the health thing. We haven't had a center for large parts of the season.
Yeah.
Joe, I think it's just kind of interesting to kind of look at this from the perspective of what's the narrative, right? I think this number is largely impacted. So this is one of those funny things where it's like, Shea's the leader. And I really hate this. And I try and educate my fellow NBA writer people about this, where they're like, well, he's the favorite. And I'm like, yeah, because the books took money on him. It's not based off of like, it's based off of what they think is going to happen, but it's way more based off of who people have bet for it to happen.
Yeah.
And if you follow the conversations, this is getting to be the central line of commentary. This is going to be the dividing point. We've not given LeBron the award, even though he was the best player in the league, several times. We didn't give it to Jordan every time, even though he was the best player in the league. There are probably other guys that we could probably, KD, I think, is probably another one that we probably could have thrown into that conversation of like, he was clearly the best player in the league. And yet, for various reasons, we were not going to give it to him. But what this is becoming is, if it was just like, oh, Jokic has stats and wins, and Shea has really good stats and wins. Like Jokic has amazing stats and wins, and Shea has amazing wins and really good stats, which is kind of like what the argument is. The problem here is that when people talk about it, they're like, we know that Joker's better. Like, we know that it's not even like on any given night, boy, I don't know. Like, every night it really does seem like Joker is the absolute best player on earth. I do not really get gushy. Like, I've covered the man the entirety of his career. I've seen some wild shit. And I still try very hard to restrain myself and not go overboard. That game last week versus the Kings broke me. Like, I couldn't get my brain around it. I was behind his right shoulder, sitting up in the tunnel above when he hits that shot, and he launches it, and I was like, "Fuck me, it's in." And like, he had a no-look full court outlet pass to Christian Brown, and it was like the sixth coolest thing he did that night. And I think there's real problems with this Nuggets team, and they might fall off. Like, we bet the under on them. But if this does turn into a two-man race, it's going to be really fucked up, because it's going to be like, how do you not give it to Shea? He's averaging 36-6 for a 70-win team. On the other hand, it's going to be like, Joker won 54 games in the West with Gordon missing time. I don't think that's not going to factor for me. I'm just saying what people will say. Gordon missing time, Murray missing time. This cast of players with Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther and Russell Westbrook.
The Westbrook narrative is fun. That he turned Westbrook into a player, into a player.
And he put together these numbers. How can it not be, like, there's a lot of, how can it not be Joker from people that aren't affiliated? Like, there's the usual amount of Thunder fans that are like, how can it not be Shea? And I'm like, you just look at, that's why I tell that to Nuggets fans. They're like, how can it not be Joker? And I was like, Shea's going to win 70 games. Probably not now, but like in general, like there's as much as there's a chance that they win 60, Jim, there's also a chance that they go for it and win 70.
Or that they don't even go for it and stumble their way to 70.
I guess the comparison, though, is if we look at it, I think he's had a slightly different narrative around him. But Tatum was the guy on the Celtics, a team that's just been crushing, right?
Yep.
And he got no MVP love. For whatever reason, his game or like his persona or whatever it is, like, is not getting the same love as Shea's. I think Shea is probably a little bit better. But like we're kind of parsing, like we're splitting hairs, really. We're saying, this one guy's like top 3, another guy's top 5, top 6, whatever. Tatum basically got zero love in the MVP race. So then I think some of the conversation that's been going around the league has been interesting. Like on the Roommates podcast, Jalen Brunson was talking to Josh Hart, and he's saying, Luka Doncic was doing crazy shit and got no love because his seed was too low. And he was like the 4 seed and was getting no love. Then on the flip side, you have Kevin Garnett, which just said the other day, he was like, Jokic is wilt. That's what he said. He said, Jokic is wilt. That's how crazy the numbers are right now. So when you have players like that saying, this seems like, it's like there's a contrasting narrative around Jokic. And I think that's what makes it hard for him, because if they don't catch up in seed, I think Jim's point about the seed, I think that's what matters, because if it's 1-2, then I think you can take out some of the team-based accolades. Whereas if it's split and it's, like 1-4 or 1-5, then it becomes a little bit easier to say, well, he's on the best team and the stats are really, really, really good, even if they're not as good as Jokic's. So that's, I think, what my concern is, and like kind of the way that I'm looking at the award.
And I think I'll say this: I bet Jokic 420 because I was just like, "Come on, like this is ridiculous." And I'll just tell you this: like my genuine hope, is that the next straw poll comes out and it's universally Jokic again. and we flip again, and then I'm just gonna bet Shea is the dog because I do think this is a 2-man race. We'll talk about the third guy in the room in a second, who's like got both arms, like hands gripping the inside of the doorway, be like, I'm still here. That's him. The seeding thing is interesting. What I will say is, here was the problem last year, was that Luka won 50 games, and that's a high number. Not a lot of teams win 50 games. It was a very good number of wins. But he was going up against 57 and 58, right? So, or 57 and 57. They lost on tiebreaker. So, that's like 7 wins is a lot when you get to that level. Like there is a gap between like you won 50 games, you had a really great season, you had a great season, you won 50 games, you won 57 games. Holy shit, you had one of the best seasons. That's the Nuggets' highest in franchise history is 57. They tied it last year because they lost that Spurs game, couldn't break the record and get the 1 seed. Like that's the conversation I think that to me matters, and that's why the thing with Shea matters is if he's 15 games above.
It might just not.
I just don't know how you don't give it to him. Like I don't know how, like, because for me centrally it does come down, like this is how I've always kind of gotten to is the point is winning. Like that's the point of the NBA is money, but after that it's winning. And Shea's on-court net rating is higher. If you're like, well, that's because he has better teammates. Okay, but they all drop when he's not on the court. Even though, again, I don't like using off court. Like my thing is that the Thunder whip more ass when Shea's on the floor than the Nuggets whip ass with Jokic on the floor. But the counter to that is, are they both offensive players primarily? Yes. Shea's been a great defender this year, but he's like the 4th best defender on the team. He's still a great defender and way better than Jokic, and that should matter. But the whole thing is offense. It's always been offense with the MVP. And if you look at offense, guess who amongst the candidates has the best on-court offensive rating? Nikola Jokic. So it's tough, man. What's up, Jim?
No, I was just gonna say I wanted to hop in with like a historical thought on this, kind of like how we reference, and I've been literally the one saying all year, like the voters 4 and 5 years type thing. I will say I do to counter myself, to go against what I have said, to kind of devil's advocate myself. I think we see in other sports, and baseball is one in particular, where it's as we get smarter and smarter about the sports, the voting is going more, it's more and more groupthink. And it's more and more just like baseball is really just control sort the WAR leaderboard. And that's who the MVP is. And that sport had Willie Mays, who probably should have won 10 MVPs, but only won 4. It has historically had that kind of thing. Whereas if Mike Trout had stayed healthy the last decade, I think he'd have 10 MVPs. It really is at this point where it's just like, let's not overthink this. We've done this in the past and we've punished players. Let's not do that now. So I do wonder, I don't think the NBA is as far along this path of like just control sort BPM, control sort EPM. I think it is a more narrative sport, and I think it's not as entrenched in numbers and an individual sport as baseball. But I do think that the general move among voting public is to just reward the best player. And I still think that there's going to be a little bit of the noise with the 4 and 5, especially because LeBron is still active too. And I think you could even see like a subterfuge, like, movement from LeBron trying to spin like MVP narrative away from Jokic if it happened. Yeah. I think that will definitely happen. But I do think, again, to counteract that, I think that the case against that is that the media is moving more and more towards kind of groupthink. I don't even mean that in a negative way. I mean that like kind of like it's moving away from that. We don't want to just give the same award to the same player every year. And I do think you're right that if you poll everyone following the sport closely, they say Jokic is the best player. And at some point, that's just going to be the winning argument. I don't think forever we'll get mixed up with narrative, but basketball is more narrative, I think. So you got to balance those two things.
The difference, I think, is that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, before social media, it was you voted for Shea? Yeah, Jokic had won 3 and I didn't want him to win another one. I'm just sick of him. I want somebody else to win. And that was it. Everyone just moved on with their lives. And now you deal with thousands of people retweeting and quote tweeting and this is the guy that did it.
Ichiro missed Hall of Fame by 1 vote. You're never going to know that 1 vote because you'll just get buried. And again, it was much more people who are sharing their ballots aren't going to do it because publicly they get torn apart. So yeah, that very much, you're right. It's 100% it.
And I'll also say this. There's this idea of like, well, it's just become too groupthink. So I did actually research on the award during the bubble freeze, the COVID lockdown, because I had some time on my hands. And one of the things that I found was that you go back to 1981 when media took over the MVP vote. It's like 90% or higher of total possible award percentage the top leader gets. So when I say that, like, I just want to be clear on this. You can't be like, if anyone tells you, like, well, I just think the NBA MVP has become too groupthink. It's always been that way.
Yeah.
And now my counter to that would be like, it hasn't been groupthink. It's that the things that we value are shared and have evolved. There wasn't a discussion of EPM in 2002 because the fucking thing didn't exist. We didn't have on off. We didn't know that. You just, like, I don't know, man. He scored 20. He averaged 28 and 12. That's good enough for me. You know, like those kind of things. So those conversations I think are really different. The end point for this though is very seriously, if you want to bet MVP from now to the end of the season, take whoever's down between those two. I think that it's going to be one of those two.
Yeah.
And I do think we're going to see a flip from now to the end of the season. But who wants to give me the Giannis case?
He's been so good.
He has been.
Like, I mean, he really has been incredible on the season. He's like
30.
fifth?
I got him right here. 31 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 60% from the field. Again, no one's like, he's the only guy to average 30 a game on 60% shooting. EFG is still 60.4% because he's actually made a few mid-range jumpers this year. That's a very significant thing for the playoffs. BPM is 8.1. His VORP is 3.3, and his EPM, I know those don't mean anything. He's Jokic and Shea are 11-ish on BPM. So like the advanced numbers do not think that Shea or that Giannis is like a serious candidate in this conversation.
Yeah.
The advanced metrics are like, yeah, he's pretty good. He's really good. He's like next tier down. And that's where I kind of think he is, because I think that the metrics I think EPM in particular does a great job of basically mirroring a consensus that a lot of people feel is reality, but maybe it's filtered otherwise. Does anybody have a case for how does this get home? How does Giannis get home here?
They have to at least be the 2 seed in the East. Like, you got to pass New York and Boston, maybe pass Cleveland if Cleveland starts to fall off. Like, if Milwaukee somehow becomes the 1 seed, he could win. But I think you probably get honestly the same number or a better number at just betting the 1 seed. So because the Cavs are just so highly favored, plus you have Boston. So the books are not really banking on anybody outside of Boston passing Cleveland. And Milwaukee's 9 games out in the loss column right now. And I think they lose the tiebreakers to Cleveland already, if I recall. But I'm not 100% sure on that. But either way, I think
Milwaukee's lost all 3 games. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're really like 10 games back in the loss column. So tall task for them to do that, I think. But that's probably the better number.
They are only 4 back of the Celtics.
Yeah.
And I think a 2 seed with 53 plus wins is interesting. Go ahead, Jim.
I think leading the league in scoring too is another little 2 seed, lead the league in scoring. Thunder come back to earth a little bit. I think there's a path, but I do, I gave out Giannis a few weeks, or I guess now it's probably like a couple months ago, and that turned into whatever the exact opposite of a CLV sandwich is, an LCV turd. I don't know what that thing was, but it was bad. It instantly went the exact opposite way. But I think the case is a 100-1 with I think he's like the very clear third person in what is very clearly a 2-person race. But it's we're halfway through the season. There's a lot of basketball to be played, and while I think he is a distinct third tier, I'm not suggesting to put a lot on it. But I do think if you put a buck on it, no pun intended, it's not a full waste of like putting $1 on Tatum, which I think would be a full waste.
Yeah. The other thing is too, obviously, if somebody gets hurt, like the way the rules are now, like it's not the way the narratives are, the media is, like, let's say Shea or Jokic gets hurt, God forbid, soon, and they're going to miss enough games to be eliminated. There's no way that they're just going to go, well, the MVP is this guy. Like, we're just not going to talk about it for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it'll be a talking point.
As soon as you start a conversation, then Giannis is going to be involved in it because he has to be. So that would be the other, I guess, like out that you'd have.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. So I think the way I would kind of think of it is, I think that Giannis can catch Jokic. I don't think he can catch Shea, because the overall comprehensive numbers aren't as strong, right? Where Shea is currently leading the league in scoring. He's 32, 5, and 6. Giannis is 32, 12, and 6. And the rebounds matter, but I'm always kind of of the opinion that rebounds are going to matter the least of all these numbers. It helps for the advanced metrics, particularly BPM, but I think it's not going to necessarily get you home on it, where it's like, if Giannis wins 52 games and Shea wins 63 wins and has 11 more, Shea's going that way. But if, God forbid, and I don't want this at all, but if Shea were to miss enough games, that's a different conversation. If it's Shea versus or if it's Giannis versus Jokic, now I think the give him 4 thing is going to really start to hit it, because there's going to be people that are just like, Giannis is at that level because he won a title. He's been considered, like, people have thought that he was the best player in the league. Like, I thought he was the best player in the league. As in one of Jokic's MVP seasons, I said I would have voted for him. It was 2021. I would have voted for him. But Giannis can catch Jokic. He can't catch Shea.
I think that's really well said, and I think I agree 100%.
Yeah. All right. Real quickly, I want to talk about Rookie of the Year, because we have another young man. Because no one decided to run away with this, and they just decided to fuck around and keep doing this thing where it's like, everyone can win this award. We have. I gotta pull this up.
He's now the favorite. It's not even that he's in the conversation.
I think it's insane. I think it's patently insane.
I think it's like
his name. It's Khalil Ware. For the Miami Heat, it was plus 150 at DraftKings.
That's ridiculous. That is a joke.
Usually the don't overreact this hard. Or the market, whatever you want to call it. But
Stephon Castle, shortest number is plus 250. You can get a plus 330 at DraftKings. Alex Sarr has slid to plus 450. Jalen Wells, who I will continue to cape for, plus 450 as well. Zach Edey, 1200. Remember when Yves Missi was going to win it? That was here's the thing with Rookie of the Year, and then I'll get you guys' thoughts on this. This is my thing. Ignore the guys who have a week, because Dalton Connect had a week, and Yves Missi had a week, and Khalil Ware's having a week. And I get it. It's different because Khalil wasn't playing, and now he's moved into a prominent role with Jimmy out, and they're playing him next to Bam, etc. I get it. I do. I get it. But also, like, he's having a week. And if he just, like, has a week and then settles back down again, you're right back there with Dalton Connect, where I was like, do not bet Dalton Connect. And everyone else was like, I don't know, man. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, no. Like, he just had a hot shooting week, and rookies don't shoot well. So, look, Castle, Wells, Sarr. I'm fine with any of those. I think any of those are pretty good bets, but I do not think that you should be betting Khalil Ware here at under plus 200. That's crazy pills, Jim Turvey.
Yeah, I think you summed it all up very well, and I this is what I tried to kind of use as a framing device last week of let's set Sarr's line of what we think he'll finish the season at, and then let's figure out what this person who is going up against him is going to have to do. And Sarr is I think if we say around 13-7 right now, he's 12-7. He's been better the last month, and the Wizards are likely going to be selling off pieces. So if we set 13-7 as around the bar to get to, Khalil Ware actually has the advantage of playing a few less games, so he's a little bit less than halfway through his season. But he's averaging. Oh, I went away from his page, unfortunately. In the meantime, I believe he's averaging like 8.2
points, 4.7 boards, half an assist.
Yeah, so to reach those numbers that Sarr has, he basically has to average like 18 and 10 for the rest of the season and like miss no games. That's, I mean, that's what he averaged, this week. If you think this week, which was the peak we have ever seen of Khalil Ware from a rookie who wasn't like the number one pick either. I mean, he does look like he has a bright future. He's flashed well this week. He basically has to do this for the entire rest of the season for a coach who is like notorious about weaving guys, especially young players, in and out of rotations and giving a lot of minutes, and then the next game giving 12 minutes, and then the next game 35, and then 17. I think this is insane that he has become the favorite in this market. I'm going to keep going back to the well with Sar. He has the highest floor. He has the established stats, and he's going to have the potential for a role to open up, unlike a Jalen Wells, who I love as well, but is more likely to, say Jimmy Butler comes into town, he's going to see his usage drop versus someone like Sar, who's going to, potentially see high usage teammates shipped out of town and have an ability to have the ball even more. So the where part of it is crazy to me.
I mean, Miami also, it's not like they don't want anything for Jimmy. They want a player back. So it gets like he just has been away. So I mean, I think this is insane. This is absolutely bonkers.
If they take Middleton, which again I'm skeptical that that's going to be the final construct of the deal. If they take Middleton immediately slides out and Khalil's back into the bench, and that's and that's fine. Like he'll come off the bench and still have pretty good numbers, but his opportunity that he's gotten with the starters goes away.
Yeah,
unless I guess they could theoretically go to Tyler, mid, one of the wings. Choose one. Whichever one you want. Something. Yeah. Highsmith. And then Khalil and Bam. But boy, the spacing gets real truncated.
That would be real rough.
That's gross. And I mean, he had 3 good games, and his last game was a dud. So I mean,
he's had one of the best. Yeah, he's already coming to earth.
You can't do this. This is crazy. So and even if you looked at it, in the last couple games, it's been great because he still had blocks. He's had 2 blocks in 4 straight games. He's still averaging half a block less than Sar per game. So it's not going to be easy to even catch him there where you'd say, oh, well, he's been incredible defensively, blocking shots, whatever. I just think this is a bonkers spot, especially because if he does tail off, Miami is not okay. Miami doesn't think that they're in a position that they should be developing the youth. Miami thinks that they're in a position that they need to be contending for the title because they have heat culture, right? So if he's not performing, he's not going to play. And when he didn't play well last game, he only played 23 minutes. So they immediately were just like, nope, we don't care. You're not doing it today. See ya. And that's a major problem. Whereas with Alex Sar, especially now, Kuzma just made some comments. He was like, I'm not going to try to fit in anymore. I'm going to be Kyle Kuzma. You think, I think they're going to have to get rid of him now. So there's just so much more opportunity at that number, plus 450. He's somebody that's going to be around the top. We know he's going to be around the top. I think this is just a good buy opportunity for Sar.
I've put a couple of tickets in on Sar. I will say that we talk about this a lot, where you can convince yourself of who should win, and then you lose because you're backing who should win versus who will win.
Yeah.
The question I think that's a really interesting one here is just are the voters still this dumb? This is a really good question to me. Is are the voters still this dumb? I think in previous years, I think Sar would be not a lock, but he'd be a very good candidate. I think, in my opinion, there's been a slow evolution towards watching more film, watching more league pass, being in more of the conversation, noticing more of the stats, giving these cases a little bit closer examination. And if you go through everything and you really result that Alex Sar has been the best rookie, even in a bad class, you have not paid attention to shit. The answer is Jalen Wells or Stephon Castle. Yeah. Those are your rookies of the year.
I think it also is. Go ahead. I would say Wells's line has not moved. Wells's line has been probably one of the most stable lines throughout the course of the entire season, or not the whole season.
Betting line or his stat line?
The betting line. The stat line's been pretty consistent too, but and I think he's improved. But the last couple times we've checked in on Rookie of the Year, Wells has been right around plus 400, plus 450. He's not moving. So I think that's interesting because we've seen Edie spike, Misi spike. Now we're seeing Ware spike. So Sar has spiked at different points, but Wells has maintained this somewhat level of consistency. And I'm wondering if there's a concern with ballooning his line because he's obviously going to get I think he would get immediate action if he started getting to the 6, 7, 800 range.
I think that there is a problem as much as I love him and think he's great. And I'm sitting here going, like, I'm doing the LeBron meme with JR being like, that's how I am with Jalen Wells, where I'm like, why has nobody noticed this kid's like really good and impactful for a playoff team? Like, someone noticed Jalen Wells. I do think like he just doesn't have any. None of these rookies have name value, but I will tell you, Stephon Castle has a lot more name value than I think Jalen Wells does.
The other thing too is I think maybe what could be hurting Wells is Memphis has been doing this like really expansive rotation. They've had a lot of players in and out with injury. I wonder if there's a concern from media or from bettors, whatever, that Wells's role isn't stable.
Yeah.
Because of because it can shrink.
Yes.
Because I mean, if Memphis is getting towards the end of the season and they have an opportunity to say maybe gun for the 2 seed because they want the 2 seed, or maybe OKC falls a little bit and they can go for the 1 seed, that would be a spot where then you say if the rotation tightens and Wells comes out of it, or like if Edey comes out of it, they're done. They're going to be cooked because of like a week or 2 stretch at the end of the season where they didn't even see the floor.
I like per 36 as a kind of a guiding point here, because for me, it's like, if they were to be given ample opportunity, what does it look like? And your leaders in per 36 scoring right now, Jared McCain, Khalil Ware is second at 18.6. Rob Dillingham has jumped up to third at 17.7, but he won't get the minutes. Brandon Carlson made in a lab by Sam Presti in his 15 games. Antonio Reeves, actually, but he's only playing a handful of minutes. Then it's Castle, Edey, Wells. That's the order. So you want Edey? Are you trying to? I will say, I think if the Grizzlies tighten rotation, I'll say that Wells is more likely to get extracted than Edey is.
I have a crazy question. This class overall has been so mid. Is there a possibility at the end of the season that the voters go, Jared McCain is still the best rookie to play this season?
Shit. That's a good question.
Whoa.
23 games. No.
Will he come back at all? Will he get Will he get like a 20-game burst to end the season and kind of refresh everyone how good he was?
I believe he's out for the season.
I think he's done. I think he's done for the year. That's why I'm like...
Probably not that. If he got that 20-game burst at the end of the season, I'd be like, oh, Joe, you're on to something.
He's going to miss the remainder of the season. So
shit.
It's really just I don't know. I think 23 games isn't enough either. But I also don't think there's really been a year where I've looked at the rest of the class and said, this class sucks. Relatively to like other classes. Not like I think a lot of them are going to have NBA careers, but that's not.
Well, here's what kills me. I just need Stephon Castle to have a good week.
Yeah.
Like, if Stephon Castle has a good week, that's it. Legitimately, that's it. Because Castle is like, he's way better than everybody else. He really is. Like, stats-wise, he's not, but when you like watching, you're just like, Castle has like 4 to 5 holy shit moments a game.
He's going to be in the dunk contest. I think that could help.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And then like, which is sad, but true. And then like, Edey, it's like, okay, hook shot, cool. Okay, they were like minus 17 in his minutes, but like, all right, he got some points on board. I get it.
He like came at Drew Eubanks the other day though. So
the only one here is with the injuries the Hawks are facing, and this is something that Joe texted immediately after I shared the Jalen Johnson. They're doing. I don't remember what the results are on Jalen right now because I've been a little bit distracted watching my team go to a 5th Super Bowl in 7 years. But Zachary Risachet. 49% from 2, 28% from 3. Just hit like a few more threes, man. Like, just like hit like one more 3 a game.
He was my portfolio piece for this right now because he's out there at like 100-1. I don't love his ceiling, but he has such a high floor, and with Jalen going out and with, the ability to hit more shots pretty easily. I looked at the games that Jalen was out and he's averaging about 14 points a game. So if he averages 14 the rest of the way, it puts him in that same kind of like 12 points a game range as Sar. He wouldn't have the rest of the stats to fill it out. So you'd probably be dealing with like a 3rd place finish or something. But to me, he's a very high floor play. And if you're collecting pieces and if you have Sar and you have Castle, I don't think it's a bad idea to, add a little bit of Risase to what is potentially going to be, like a top 3 or top 5 finish for him.
He's also been out the last 6 games. So
Yeah.
you're really getting like a pretty buy low spot right now on Risase. If you throw like 0.1 units on it, bringing back 10.
Yeah.
If you hit. So I don't mind that.
What a crazy season for this award.
I've come around from hating it. I still hate it, but I'm like very entertained by it now. I
It
no
is
longer
very
don't want
entertaining.
to talk about it.
This is why I love betting.
Yeah.
Is we get to take things like this and we're like, it's uncertain, and uncertainty is always great.
It is.
Like, the MVP market's tough because it's like, yeah, it's definitely going to be Shea or Jokic. It's definitely going to be one of those two. Can't do long shots on it. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to be Karl Anthony Towns. Can't do that. It's not. It's going to be Shea or it's going to be Jokic.
No one on this podcast would ever do that.
No one would ever do that. All right, let's do best bets for Friday or for Monday. I'm sorry, Monday in the association. We'll go around the horn. We'll give our best bets, and then we'll give the cap on it. Jim Turvey starts off from the Tommy John's home studios. What are your best bets for Monday in the association?
I've got Rockets plus 6.5, and I've got Evan Mobley under 25.5 points plus rebounds.
Okay, Joe Dellera, what are yours?
I've got 3. I've got Thompson over 29.5 PRA, Zion Williamson over 21.5 points, and Bogdan Bogdanovic over 2.5 assists for the gross play of the day here for Matt.
Look, these numbers are like Sean Kerner's props that he plays, and they are dynamite every time the markets move huge, so you should be on it as well. I'm going to take... I am definitely in on Rockets. I am going to play Lakers minus 5.5 versus Hornets. I am going to play under on Clippers Suns. Again, I cannot stop betting Clippers unders, even though it keeps hurting me. And I'm going to take under on Wizards Mavericks as well. Hawks Wolves over is a lean, but probably not with the amount of guys that are out for Atlanta. All right, let's start with this Rockets game. This is the best game of the night, obviously. Rockets at Celtics. Want to hear it again? Because I'm going to keep running these stats back as long as we got spots like this. The Houston Rockets are 70% against the spread on the road. The Boston Celtics are 34.8% this season at home against the spread. They also, by the way, notably, the Rockets are 55% in the first half overall this season. The Celtics are overall a 44% first half team. So if you like the first half, you can get in on that as well. Let's go to Jim Turvey for the cap on that, and then we'll rotate through the props. Let's start off with why you like Rockets plus 6 in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Rockets on the road and Celtics at home, but just in general this season, the Rockets are 26-17 against the spread. The Celtics are 18-27. So this is a Celtics team. We've talked about this on the podcast, thinking about them from a futures perspective, where it's like, at this point, I think it's clear. We don't know whether it's, kind of the natural year after a championship, the team just takes the foot off the gas a little bit, or if it's that, we do have legitimate questions about them. Either way, the truth is they are not quite the team they were last year, especially they're not the team that the market thinks they are. They're 18-27 against the spread. The Rockets, on the other hand, I've done this a few times where you look at you're like, oh, what about the Rockets against a good offense? I bet maybe like a really finely tuned offense is really good. Nope, they're really good against great offenses. Bad defenses, maybe they match something. Nope, they're just really good. The Rockets are just really good. And then you get to add in a little bit of the Ime Udoka going against his old team. And that's a dude who's going to fire up his team no matter what. And I think that team doesn't really need a lot of firing up. You got Dylan Brooks, you got Thompson. You have a bunch of firecrackers on that team in general. The Celtics laid the smackdown on them the first time they played. So I think, it's easy to retrofit that, right? Because if they won by a lot, I'd be like, oh, they match up well with them. And now it's like, oh, they want revenge. But I do think it's very easy to slip into that, Udoka, and they got embarrassed last time. It was a little bit of a chippy game as well. So I think that grabbing the points with this Rockets team here, Duncan Threes has as a 4-point game. We've got Derek White listed as questionable. He was on that when I wrote up the Jalen Johnson All-Stars of those players who, aren't going to move the spread to the actual amount that they are truly worth to the team. Even though Derek White is having a little bit of an off season, he still is an incredibly valuable contributor on both sides of the ball, and one of those guys that the spread isn't going to fully value enough. So I think especially if Derek White's out, I'm going to like this even more. I just think there's a lot to like with. I know we're going to talk through a little bit of like a same game parlay with in terms of like certain matchups and stuff. I love the way Houston matched up with Boston here on Monday.
Yeah, and I think that this is one where Boston, this is kind of the thing. They're coming off of this game versus the Mavericks, rematch of the finals. Look at their games here. Okay, so they go to Golden State and they beat them by 40. And they're motivated. They're playing Kerr. They hate Kerr. They hate the Warriors for denying them the title. They smack that team by 40. I think that has a lot to do with the fact the Golden State Warriors are kind of garbage. But also, the Celtics played really great and destroyed them. They have a letdown spot versus the Clippers, and they take that team to overtime, right? Like, nobody plays for the Clippers, and yet it goes to overtime. Then they have to play in the LA Nightlife-est of LA Nightlife games, and they have to play the Lakers, and the Lakers smack them around. Okay, so they kind of got caught there with, like, LA Nightlife and the Lakers, and, like, it's okay. Then they go to Dallas. Finals rematch. You saw this team. This is like a get right spot. Hey, we've been losing too much. Let's really focus in here. They destroy them. Now, first game back off the road trip. Data says that's not really a great spot over the last 10 years in terms of fading them. It's just kind of mixed. But to me, this is not a letdown game. But I do think it's the Rockets are going to play so hard. Because that's how they're wired. They just play really hard. And quietly, the offense is starting to get it together. I'm going to have a play on the over in this game as well, because I've talked about the Celtics defense being absolutely wretched, and that's been the case. Rockets on the road, by the way, Rockets are road games, 61.9% to the over. Celtics home games, 56.5% to the over. And I project this all the way up at 225. So if you wake up tomorrow morning and this is 224.5, pass on by. But I like it at where the number is at right now. What's interesting is if I give normalized home court, if I give Boston the same home court you give every team, I make this 7.3. And that feels right to me. Like, if that honestly feels kind of right to me. Houston is still a class below Boston, and Boston's at home. So, like, you know, this would be a roughly 5 point, like Boston by 5 on neutral seems right to me. However, my super adjustment number, which is what I've called it, it factors in performance against the spread at home. And with those adjusted numbers there, I only have this as Celtics by 1. So that to me puts this well within range. And that's borne out. I would have doubt about that if it wasn't the case over the course of the season where Boston's been so bad at home. Joe, Thompson's been a revelation since he came in. He's he is everybody's favorite. He's a league pass darling right now.
Yeah.
I love him. Like, I would give a small organ for him. Like, not the ones I would already give for Mahomes, but anything that I would not give for Mahomes, Amon can have. Tell me about Thompson, 29.5 PRA.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for him has been without Jabari Smith, he's seeing extended run, and he's hit this in 6 of 9 games this season without Jabari. He's averaging 33.9 PRA in those 9 games. Additionally, he's played basically at least 34 minutes in all of these games. He's playing in the 40s. He's playing a Tibbs rotation. That's how many minutes he's playing. So the floor is really, really high for him in terms of minutes and in terms of his usage. He's also, I think, perfect for this Boston matchup. He is long. He's switchable. He can do a little bit of everything. He scores in the paint. He can score on cuts. He can create for himself a little bit. And he also can create for others along with crashing the glass. So I really love the spot for Amen. I think the line is not 100% adjusted for just how good he's been. And if we look, even his most 2 recent games, 36 and 47 PRA against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we know that he can step up in some of these bigger matchups, these tougher matchups. I really like him to go over the 29.5. It's just, I don't think it's fully adjusted to how good he's been.
Wait, Joe, real quick. You mentioned Tibbs minutes.
Yeah.
Have you seen the top of the minutes played leaderboard right now?
Oh, is he?
No, but it's Nick, and Edwards, Nick. 4 of the 5 in the entire league.
Is it raw minutes? Is it raw minutes? Is it like
raw
total
minutes?
Yeah, because I think the Knicks have played more games than a lot of teams too right now. So I will give them a
okay, that makes sense. I just had to chuckle. I was like, man, how have the wheels not fallen off? But credit to them.
Yeah,
well, I mean, arguing with me that Tibbs doesn't do that. They're like, that's a myth the media made up. Tibbs actually doesn't play his guys that much. I was like, are you out of your fucking mind? Things people say on the internet. Okay. All right. So here, I want to build this parlay, and I'm always looking like I get too greedy, and I will start going into double digits. Rockets money line, which, look, I don't see any. If we know the history of if a team covers, they win outright. I cannot justify not taking Rockets money line here. Like, I get it.
I, as the person who gave 6.5, I was like, oh, good. Matt said he's not going to be greedy. He'll go back to spread. And then they're like, we're going Rockets money line.
Because, well, look, okay, so here's the thing is, if we follow the trend of the league, and I'll run it for this season, if you are a dog this season, and you cover the spread, 214 and 124, you win 63% of the time.
Yeah, I'd be curious what the if that's like baked in though, like because naturally that's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I want to know what like the above expectation would be.
Okay, so are you saying? So what number do we need here?
I don't know. That's on the fly. I can't math it.
You can't cover and lose. So
yeah,
like,
I know.
You can't win the game and not cover. So
that's deep, man.
Yeah. So I just do you. All right. Well, I'm open to this. Do you want to go with the 6.5?
Let's see what the number comes to, and then we'll see if we have to get greedy. Let's start with 6.5.
All right, +6.
I like that number.
Almond plus. All right, Rockets +6. Almond over 29.5. Now here's a question: would you rather do 25 Tatum plus points, which is beneath his actual line, or would you rather have the over?
I say both. I say that's where we get greedy.
Yeah.
But more legs is harder.
Yeah, that's true.
They are probably like slightly correlated, I guess.
Joe, which do you like better, the over or Tatum 25 plus? My thing on Tatum is the Rockets' one weakness. They are bottom 13th. They're 13th percentile in isolation defense this season. That's the one area where you can actually go at them and score. Tatum is the guy that by far takes the most ISOs.
Yeah.
Derek White's questionable with a contusion.
My one concern is that when they played, a couple weeks ago, Tatum only scored 20.
Yep.
And
with
Thompson
7
could draw him as a matchup.
Yeah, like 7 for 19 from the field.
His history is he has gone over this in 4 of 7 versus the Rockets.
Yeah.
But
what is the over in the game?
Under in 3 of 4.
I think I would lean towards the game over.
Okay.
Even though I'm like
that was Tatum 25 plus was my prop. So let's definitely kill that right now. So let's do the over
30
there.
ball income.
All right, this is solid. This is a good parlay. 3-leg plus 465. 29.5 Thompson PRA, Rockets +6 in the over.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because they're correlating that I think what's happening here is we're getting inverse correlation.
Yeah.
Because they think if this is an over, there's no way Houston wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
Lock it in. Over 29.5, Almond Thompson points, rebounds, and assists. Rockets +6, over 222. That's your same game parlay for buckets for Monday. Let's go to Jim Turvey for Evan Mobley unders on points and rebounds.
Exactly. Yeah. 25.5 points plus rebounds. So this is his second game back returning from a calf injury. They're going up against the Detroit Pistons, who have really been, they cashed our win total over already, Matt. Absolutely glorious. They've been great this season. One of the kind of under the radar players for them has been Isaiah Stewart, his defense off the bench. This has been a common topic. Andrew O'Connor Watts, our buddy, sends me a text every week that's like, yo, check out these Isaiah Stewart defense numbers. We need him on the Knicks. He has been a very, very good defender. And what I think is interesting about this, he's the backup big for the Pistons. So theoretically, that wouldn't impact Evan Mobley very much. However, the rotations the Cavaliers run often put Mobley out. He starts the game, then he takes a little bench sit there in the middle of the first quarter and comes out and runs with the bench unit. So he would likely be lining up minutes wise with Isaiah Stewart, who's an incredibly tough defender. Mobley has been improved on offense this year, but it will be his second game back from this injury. The Pistons are actually a really good defensive rebounding team. They allow the 4th fewest rebounds in the league. And again, we only saw 29 minutes in his first game back from Evan Mobley, so he might not be pushing into. I mean, the Cavaliers as a whole don't run that many minutes, so I don't think you're going to be at risk of like him playing 35 minutes and going over this because of that. I think he'll be in the low 30s, if that. He's going against a very good defender in Stewart and going against a Pistons team that's a very good defensive team. So I think combine all those factors together, I'm be looking to go under on Evan Mobley, 25.5 point plus rebounds on Monday.
Love the cap. I have nothing to add there. That's great. Yeah, Pistons got home on 22.5, which is the opening number. We are at checking. They are at 23 for the over 2.5. I need 3 more for the closing line at 25.5, which I also bet. I bet this team like 3 times.
Matt, you know what's really funny? Do you remember I ran one of these like full season DraftKings season specials by you, and it was Pistons. One of the legs was Pistons to make the playoffs, which is very viable. Do you happen to remember what the other leg is that's not going to hit? Which is it's like the Pistons are going to make the playoffs, and I'm not going to win this bet. Do you remember what it was?
What was it?
Tobias Harris to score 18 plus points a game, and he's like not even close. It's so sad.
Oh, Toby's having a hard time.
I was like, there's no way they make the playoffs without Harris averaging 18 points a game. Well, surprise.
And then Cade became elite. Yeah. Yeah, very excited about that Pistons ticket. That was a dynamite one. I will say in the in our division preview, I was like, I don't want play-in, I don't want playoffs. I just want over. They're still going to be bad. The problem is like my numbers are all like, yeah, they're still bad, but they just keep winning games. And I'm like, they can make the playoffs. I next time that's like a hard rule that I'm learning for these things is like, look, if you're taking a team in the 20s and you think that they're going to win over 28.5 games, if I've got them up from their 30,
in the East,
just kick them up, man. Like stop. Yeah. Don't. Because you want to know what part of it was is that I didn't factor in that their strength of schedule had to improve because they were already dogs to most of their schedule, but then the rest of their schedule got easier because a lot of teams are worse. So it's like, if this team is better, then inherently they're going to equalize over some of these other squads. Yeah. I got to figure out a way to kind of quantify that for the next year's win totals. Anyway, let's go to Joe Dellera, who's got, all right, which one do you want to do first?
We do Zion first.
Let's do Zion.
So I like the spot. It's Zion over 21.5 points. It's a game against the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors play at one of the fastest paces in the league, so I think it's a clear pace-up spot for him. Additionally, we don't have Brandon Ingram still, so his usage is still pretty solid. This season, he's hit this in 3 of 5 games without Ingram. When we look at Zion's minutes, though, it's been kind of fascinating because he's just not playing a ton of minutes yet. He's seen minutes as low as like 22 the other day. So, and he's still putting up monster performances on a per minute basis. So to me, with Zion, the main thing is when he does have limited minutes, he's basically just trying to score the ball every single time he gets the ball. And if he does have extended minutes, then we're going to have a little bit more opportunity here. The pairing has been good with him and Murray. Murray's even on the report, so if Murray's out, that's going to be even a little bit more usage for Zion. So I like the spot at over 21.5 against this Raptors team that obviously has a pretty bad defense. They're bottom 10 in the league, and they're also playing at a top 10 pace in the league. So I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity for Zion to go over the 21.5 points here against the Raptors.
Raptors were a bottom 5 team in points in the paint allowed early on in the season. They've stabilized per 100. They're down to 16th, which is much better. So they've actually been a little bit better in terms of containing, but it's also like, they might be good at containing humans, but not Zion Williamson. So I really don't know what to make of the Raptors. They have these nights and they have the full component and they look awful, and they have nights with the full component where they look pretty good and they're competitive and they get some surprise wins. So I don't know what to make of Toronto. They're entering that basket with the Pelicans and the Sixers where I'm like, I'm just going to put you over here, leave you alone for a while. I was so good. Like, there's been multiple times for me where I've been like, oh, I should bet the Sixers here or bet against the Sixers. I'm like, nope.
No.
Don't
Slap
do
the
it.
hand.
Nope.
It's not worth it.
All right. What else we got? Anything left? What you got? One more joke?
Bogdanovich.
You forgot the prettiest prop of them all.
He was trying to forget it. So I like Bogdanovich over 2.5 assists. Trae Young's not going to be playing in this game. Neither is Jalen Johnson. And the biggest thing is for Bogdanovich, his assist spike. Normally you would look and you'd say, all right, well, like Dyson Daniels makes a little bit of sense, or and they've adjusted his line enough. So his assist prop was already up to 5.5. I think that Bogdanovich hasn't been adjusted for here, where his assists basically double per 100 possessions without Trae this season, going from 2.3 per 100 to 5.6 per 100 without Trae Young. So I think that given the fact that there's no Trae and there's no Jalen Johnson, I think that Bogdanovich could take on some like secondary facilitator of a role here. And I think that there's obviously a couple new variables with Dyson, Risha Shea, DeAndre Hunter's been a little bit better, but I think that he could run a little bit more point here. So at 2.5 assists, I think the line it's not been adjusted for, given the fact that I think that his role is going to switch just a little bit because they're going to need a little bit more creation. They have a lot of guys that can stand on the perimeter or stand in the paint and score if they're passed to, but not as many players that can kind of create for their teammates. So I like Bogdanovich to go over 2.5 assists. I probably would look for some alts, maybe get like a 5+ as well whenever that pops too.
This is gross. All right. To go over the injury list here, Kobe Buffkin is out. DeAndre Hunter is questionable with illness. Jalen Johnson is out indefinitely. Larry Nance Jr. is questionable. Zachary Risachet is questionable. Wallace Keaton is questionable. He's with the G League currently. Trae Young is out as previously stated. But I'll give you this. So one of the things that I think about with the system, this is maybe wrong for prop consideration, but I think it's like an interesting talking point. I think assists are contagious. I think it's how you are you playing a style that leads to assists? There's certain guys that are going to generate assists no matter what because they have the ball and the way that they play and they're good passers. Trae.
Yeah.
But the Atlanta Hawk, who has played over 500 minutes with the highest on-court assist percentage, the highest is Garrison Matthews, the next highest is Bogdanovich. He has one of the highest on-off court. When Bogdan plays, they move the ball. When he doesn't play, they don't move the ball as much.
And for what it's worth, over the last couple of seasons, without Trae Young, without Jalen Johnson, he's hit this in 11 of 13 games that fit that construct, averaging 4.5 assists on 7.8 potentials. So small sample size, dating back over the past couple of seasons. So a lot of players in, a lot of players out, but still, I think it shows that there is an ability to scale up in terms of the passing for Bogdanovich.
Well, and to Matt's point, I just looked, and this season with Trae on and off the court, there's basically no change in the Hawks assists per 100 possessions. They drop by 1 assist. So there's still assists to be had out there because it just takes a different form. It's a bunch of guys moving the ball instead of one guy throwing lobs. But the difference in team assists is not all that different.
All right. I'll run over mine real quick because they're both basically just model plays. Lakers playing really great right now. The Hornets have been a little bit better, but I do not think that they're in the weight class. I make this 7.8 versus 5.5. I'll lay the wood here. The Lakers have not been great on the road. They're 43% against the spread on the road. The Hornets are 54.6%, but I do like the spot. I just think the Lakers are riding momentum, and they will smash an undersized team. I'm sure that Joe Dellera will be on Mark Williams over points, and I will also bet it because my entire job right now is to tank his Mark Williams drops.
I will say I'm probably going to I'm waiting for the PA to pop because the assists have been there. And I think that especially in this matchup against Anthony Davis, we could see a little bit more assists. So I'm actually considering going full other way and going to just the assists, but we'll see. I definitely want the assists to be included.
Hawks Wolves, the total is 219.5. I make it 224.4 with everybody. I don't know how to do this with Jalen Johnson and those guys out. I'm going to leave it alone, but I really want to play it because both these teams in their respective spots are over teams. I will, however, play the under in the Wizards Mavericks games. I got burned on the Celtics game the other day, but I'm right back to the well. 40. Okay. The under on Wizards road games is 57.1%. The under in Mavericks home games is 61%. And I make this way below. They can't. The Mavericks can't score. Okay, they can versus the Wizards because it's the Wizards, but they're just not built to do this without Luka, and that's been pretty evident. Their offense is just largely broken right now. Lively in particular, I think takes a lot of spring out of their ability to do things without Luka on the floor. So until Luka gets back with this high of a number at 231.5, I'll go under. Clippers Suns is just it's model plus spot. These two teams are sub 32% the over in their respective spots. And I just genuinely think the Clippers team is a really good, solid underplay consistently, especially on the road. They've been in a really good spot there. So I'll take the under in that game as well. All right. Joe Dellera is on Rockets +6 and Evan Mobley under points and rebounds. Joe Dellera is on Thompson over 29.5 PRA, Zion over 21.5 points, Bogdan Bogdanovic over 2.5 assists. Our same game parlay for the night. Rockets +6, over 222, over 29.5 PRA. That's 465 at DraftKings. Hope you guys have enjoyed the show. It's been a healthy discussion tonight. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, Friday Rubino, Gifford Gould, getting up at youtube.com/The Action Network. You can find quick slips for all of our bets in the episode description on YouTube or in the podcast form. You go down there and you click on those, and it's going to take you right to the book to bet them. So go ahead and click on those. Give us a like and subscribe at The Action Network. Give us 5-star reviews on our podcast feed. We'll see you tomorrow night for more best bets. Till then, let's get buckets.